My father waited until the appetizers arrived to announce that I was worthless. He said it loudly, ensuring the tables nearby heard that his 33-year-old daughter had never amounted to anything. He wanted a scene. Instead, I stayed quiet. I didn't know then that a state senator was watching us from 3 tables away, or that my silence was about to cost my father everything he was trying to hide. The fluorescence of the office lights always seemed to hum louder after 5 in the afternoon. It was a specific frequency, a low drone that burrowed right behind my eyes, matching the headache I had been nursing since my lunch break. I stared at the dual monitors in front of me, scrolling through row 4000 of a vendor compliance audit for a regional healthcare supplier. To anyone else, the screen was a wall of numbingly boring data: dates, routing numbers, authorization codes, and physician signatures. To me, it was a narrative. If you looked closely enough, the numbers told stories about who was cutting corners, who was exhausted, and who was stealing. I was good at this. I was 33 years old, and I had spent the last 7 years making sure other people followed the rules. My job title was compliance officer, a term that sounded authoritative but mostly meant I was the person everyone in the sales department avoided at the coffee machine. I was the brakes on their race car. I was the nagging detail that kept the company from getting sued. And for this service, I was paid a salary that just barely covered the rent on my 1-bedroom apartment on the edge of the city. My phone buzzed against the hard laminate of the desk. The screen lit up with the name, Mom. I let it buzz twice. I knew exactly what the conversation would be. It was the same conversation we had every time my father decided we needed a family dinner to display our unity to the local public. I answered on the 3rd buzz. "Hi." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice flat. "Violet, you are coming tonight, aren't you?" Her voice was high, tight, pitched somewhere between a question and a plea. "Your father booked the table at the Sterling. It is the one near the river. He specifically asked for the patio, but I think it might be too chilly." I rubbed my temple. The Sterling was expensive. It was the kind of place where the waiters scraped the crumbs off the tablecloth between courses with a little metal blade. It was a stage, not a restaurant. I have a lot of work to finish. "Mom, we have a federal audit coming up next month and my team is understaffed. Please, Violet." She dropped the pitch, moving into the guilt phase. "It has been months since we were all together. Your sister is driving in. Your father has been moody. He needs to see everyone together. It keeps the peace." Keeping the peace. That was the family motto. It was etched into our crest, invisible but heavy. We did not solve problems. We buried them under expensive dinners and polite conversation until they rotted. I was the designated peacekeeper. Mostly because I was the only one willing to absorb the silence. My sister, Sarah, was the golden child, the one who floated above the tension on a cloud of charisma and expertly curated social media posts. My father was the storm, and I was the ground that absorbed the rain. "Fine," I said. "I will be there. 7? 7 sharp. Do not be late. You know how he gets." I hung up and looked back at the spreadsheet. A discrepancy in row 4012 caught my eye. A double-billed consultation fee. It was small, only $200, but it was the 3rd one I had found from this specific clinic in a week. Pattern recognition was my superpower. Though it felt more like a curse, I flagged the cell, saved the file, and shut down the computer. I drove to the restaurant in my 6-year-old sedan. The one with the scratch on the passenger door I still hadn't fixed because the deductible was too high. The Sterling was located in the revitalized River District, a part of town that had gone from warehouses to wine bars in the span of 5 years. Valet parking was mandatory. I handed my keys to a boy who looked like he was still in high school and ignored the way his eyes flicked dismissively over my car's faded upholstery. My family was already seated when I walked in. They were at a round table near the center of the room, positioned for maximum visibility. My father, Robert Reed, sat facing the entrance. He was a large man, broad-shouldered and silver-haired, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. He looked like a statesman, which was exactly the image he had been curating for 40 years as a local business consultant and power broker. Next to him was my mother, Ellen, shrinking into her chair, her smile fixed and anxious, and there was Sarah. She was 29, glowing with the kind of health that comes from expensive vitamins and low stress. She was laughing at something my father had said, her head thrown back, her hand touching his arm. I approached the table. My father saw me, checked his watch, and frowned. 7:03, he said. We almost ordered without you. There was traffic on the bridge, I said, taking the empty seat across from him. I pulled the napkin into my lap. Hi, Dad. Hi, Mom. Sarah beamed at me. Violet, you look tired. Are you sleeping? You have those shadows under your eyes again. I am working. Sarah, it is called a job. My father made a noise in his throat, a sharp grunt of dismissal. Do not start with the martyr act. Violet, we are here to celebrate. Celebrate what? I asked, reaching for the water glass. Sarah's promotion. He gestured to my sister, as if presenting a prize show pony. She is now the senior brand liaison for the development group. A massive step up. Real responsibility, not just staring at spreadsheets all day hoping to catch someone losing a receipt. The waiter arrived to pour wine. I watched the red liquid fill the glass, focusing on the swirl to keep my face neutral. That is great. Sarah, I said, congratulations. It is exciting, Sarah said. Though her eyes didn't meet mine, she was looking past me, scanning the room to see who else was dining tonight. It is mostly networking. Really, connecting people. Exactly, my father said, leaning back. That is how the world works. Violet, people, connections, influence. You cannot build a life checking boxes. You have to build relationships. Sarah understands that. I took a sip of the wine. It was bitter. Or maybe that was just the taste in my mouth. My job protects people. Dad, it stops fraud. It keeps costs down for patients. He laughed. It was a loud, booming sound that made two heads turn at the nearby tables. He loved that. He loved being the loudest thing in the room. Paper pushing, he declared. You are a glorified hall monitor. And look where it has gotten you. Driving that beat-up car. Living in that apartment complex that smells like boiled cabbage. If you had half of Sarah's drive, you would be running a department by now, not burying your nose in clerical work. I felt the heat rising in my neck. I kept my voice low. I was promoted last year. Dad, I manage 3 junior analysts. And what do you make? 50,000? 60? I did not answer. He knew exactly what I made because he had asked me 6 months ago, ostensibly to help me with tax advice, and then had used the number to make fun of me ever since. Meanwhile, he continued, buttering a roll with aggressive strokes, Sarah is closing deals. She is out there in the world. You are hiding from it. You have always been like that. Timid, risk-averse. I am not timid. I said, I am careful. There is a difference. He scoffed. You are boring. Violet, that is the word. You lack spark. You lack the killer instinct. That is why you are single. That is why you are stalled. My mother reached out and touched his hand. Robert, please, let us just have a nice dinner. I'm just telling her the truth. Ellen, someone has to. She walks around with this sour look on her face like the world owes her something. I set my glass down. I do not think the world owes me anything. I pay my own bills. I handle my own life. Do you? He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. He smelled the blood in the water now, because last I checked, I was the one who co-signed that lease for you 5 years ago, because your credit was too thin. I was the one who introduced you to the hiring manager at your current company. You think you got there on merit? You got there because of my name. That is not true, I said. The hiring manager did not even know who you were. And the lease was 5 years ago. I have never missed a payment. Technicalities. He waved his hand. The point is, you are a drain. Violet, you take up space. You sit there with your judgment and your little rules. looking down on the people who actually build things. I looked around the table. Sarah was studying her manicure. My mother was staring at the centerpiece candle. No one was going to step in. This was the ritual. I was the scapegoat, the vessel for all his insecurities about his own fading relevance, if he could make me feel small. He felt big. I took a breath. I am not a drain. Dad, and actually, I paid off the car loan last month. I am debt-free. He froze. For a second, I thought he might congratulate me, then his face twisted. Oh, listen to her. He raised his voice. The volume was deliberate. He wanted the table of 4 next to us to hear. He wanted the couple in the corner to hear. You paid off a used car. Someone give her a medal. Dad, lower your voice, I said. Do not tell me what to do. He slammed his hand on the table. The silverware jumped. The restaurant went quiet. Nearby, conversations stopped. You are dramatic, he hissed. You always have to make it about you. You provoke me, and then you play the victim. You are worthless. Violet, you hear me? Worthless. The word hung in the air. It was heavy and ugly. He wasn't done. We gave you everything. Private schools, tutors, opportunities, and you have never amounted to anything. You are a zero, a blank space. I looked at him. I looked at the red flush in his cheeks, the cruelty in his eyes. He wanted me to cry. He wanted me to scream back so he could call me hysterical. He was waiting for the reaction that would justify his abuse. I didn't give it to him. I picked up my napkin, folded it neatly into a square, and placed it on the table. I didn't say a word. I just looked at him with a flat, calm gaze. The silence stretched. 5 seconds, 10 seconds. His eyes darted around. He saw people staring. He saw that I wasn't breaking. The silence was stripping him naked. He opened his mouth to say something else, to dig deeper, when a sound from the table behind me shattered the tension. It wasn't a scream. It was a gasp, followed by the clatter of a purse hitting the floor. I turned in my chair. At the table directly behind ours, a woman in her 60s was clutching her chest, her face pale and slick with sudden sweat. She wasn't choking. She was gasping for air, her eyes wide with terror. The man with her, her husband, presumably, was frozen, his hands hovering uselessly in the air. Oh my God, the man stammered. She left it in the car. The bag. I didn't think. I didn't look at my father. I stood up. I walked the 3 steps to their table. The woman was hyperventilating now, her breathing shallow and ragged. Sir, I said. My voice was calm. It was my work voice, the voice I used when a vendor was screaming about a rejected invoice. Look at me. What did she leave? Medication, he said, his voice cracking. Her heart pills. She gets these palpitations. She needs the beta blocker. It's in the other bag, in the car. I turned to the nearest waiter, a young man who looked terrified. Go to the manager, I said. Tell them to call 911 immediately. Tell them we have a possible cardiac event. Go. The waiter ran. I turned back to the husband. Where's the car? Valet, he said. It's the blue Mercedes. Ticket? He patted his pockets frantically. Jacket. In my jacket. Give it to me. He handed me the ticket. I flagged down a busboy who was clearing a nearby table. Take this to the valet stand, I said. Run. Blue Mercedes. Look for a brown leather bag. Bring it here. Do not walk. Run. The busboy nodded and sprinted toward the front door. I knelt beside the woman. She was trembling. I took her hand. It was ice cold. My name is Violet, I said. Help is coming. Your husband is right here. The medication is coming. She squeezed my hand so hard it hurt. I could feel her pulse racing, erratic and thready. I need you to focus on me, I said. Can you breathe with me? In for 4. Out for 4. I demonstrated. She tried to follow. I kept eye contact, locking her into my calm. I ignored the whispers in the room. I ignored my father, who I knew was watching with his mouth open. I blocked out everything except the rhythm of the woman's breathing and the ticking of the seconds. Is she okay? The husband asked. his voice shaking. "She is doing great." I lied smoothly. "She is strong." 2 minutes later, the busboy burst back into the room. Holding a brown leather tote bag, the husband snatched it, ripped it open, and pulled out a small orange bottle. "Here," he said. He fumbled with the cap. I took the bottle from his shaking hands. I popped the cap, shook out one pill, and handed it to him. He placed it under her tongue. The manager arrived then, looking flushed. "Paramedics are 3 minutes out." "Good," I said. I stood up, my knees cracking slightly. "Keep the area clear. Give her air." I stepped back as the husband leaned in to hold his wife. Her breathing was already starting to hitch less, the color returning slightly to her cheeks. I watched for another 10 seconds to be sure. Then I turned around. The entire section of the restaurant was staring at me. My father looked furious, not because of the disruption, but because I had stopped being the victim and had become something else, something competent. I had stolen his scene. I sat back down at my table. I picked up my fork. "I apologize." I said to the table, "Where were we?" My father opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a shadow fell over our table. I looked up. A young woman in a sharp gray suit was standing there. She wasn't looking at my father. She was looking at me. "Excuse me," she said. My father immediately straightened his tie. He put on his best Chamber of Commerce smile. "Yes? Can I help you?" "I am Robert Reed. Perhaps you recognize—" The woman didn't even glance at him. She kept her eyes locked on mine. "Ma'am," she said to me, "the senator would like a word." I blinked. The senator? I looked past her. 3 tables away, in a semi-private alcove I hadn't noticed before, sat a woman I recognized from the local news, Senator Eleanor Caldwell. She was older than she looked on television, her hair a steel gray bob, wearing a black blazer that looked tailored to within an inch of its life. She was watching me. "Me?" I asked. "Yes," the aide said. "Just for a moment, if you don't mind." I felt a flush of embarrassment. I assumed I had done something wrong. Maybe I had been too loud giving orders. Maybe I had violated some liability protocol by handling the medication bottle. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "No problem," the aide said. "She just wants to say hello." I looked at my father. His face was a mask of confusion and jealousy. He opened his mouth, likely to offer to come with me, to explain that he was the important one, the donor, the man to know. I stood up before he could speak. "Okay," I said. I followed the aide to the alcove. Senator Caldwell didn't stand up, but she shifted in her seat, turning her full attention to me, up close. Her eyes were incredibly sharp, dark and unblinking. "You handled that well," the senator said. Her voice was lower than I expected, raspy and direct. Thank you." I said, "I just did what made sense. Most people panic," she said, "or they pull out their phones to record it. You coordinated the staff, you located the asset, the medication, and you managed the stakeholders." She gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Sit for a second." I sat. I felt absurdly out of place in my department store dress next to her silk blouse. "What is your name?" she asked. "Violet Reed." "And what do you do?" "Violet Reed? Are you a nurse? A first responder?" "No," I said. "I work in compliance." "For a healthcare vendor?" She raised an eyebrow. "Compliance? Yes. I audit billing codes. I look for fraud. I check regulatory adherence." She smiled. It wasn't a warm, grandmotherly smile. It was a predator smile, appreciative of another predator. "You look for the rot," she said. "I suppose so. And you are used to people not liking you for it," she added. I nodded. "It is not a popularity contest." She leaned back. "Studying me. I watched you with your family before the incident. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the body language. You were taking a beating, and you took it. You didn't break. Then the emergency happened, and you switched it off. You went from victim to commander in 3 seconds. That is a rare trait. Compartmentalization. I didn't know what to say. I felt exposed. We need more people like you around actual decisions." She said, "People who check the bag instead of screaming at the air." She glanced at her aide. The aide stepped forward and placed a small, cream-colored business card on the table in front of me. "I have a feeling you are underutilized, Violet," the senator said, "and I have a feeling you are tired of it." I looked at the card. It didn't have the Senate seal on it. It just had a name and a number. "Thank you, Senator." I said. "Go finish your dinner," she said, "and tell your father he has spinach in his teeth." She didn't really mean the last part, but the dismissal was clear. I stood up, took the card, and walked back to my table. My legs felt unsteady. When I sat down, the silence at my table was absolute. My mother looked terrified. Sarah looked jealous. My father looked like he was vibrating with the need to know. "Well?" he demanded. What did she want? Did she recognize me? I met her at the fundraiser 2 years ago. I'm sure she wanted to send her regards. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had just called me worthless. I thought about the senator's eyes. "You look for the rot. She didn't mention you." "Dad," I said. He turned a shade of purple. "Don't lie to me. Why would she talk to you? What could she possibly have to say to a paper pusher?" I didn't answer. I looked down at the card in my hand. I flipped it over. On the back, written in blue ink in a sharp, angular hand, were 2 words: "Coffee, tomorrow." I slid the card into my purse and zipped it shut. "Check, please," I said to the passing waiter. My father sputtered. "We haven't even ordered entrees. I have lost my appetite," I said, "and I have an early morning." I stood up, for the first time in my life. I didn't wait for his permission to leave. I walked out to the valet stand, leaving my family sitting in the wreckage of their own dinner. While the senator watched from the shadows, my apartment was quiet, but it was not peaceful. I spent the night staring at the ceiling, the streetlights from the parking lot slicing through the blinds and painting bars of light across my duvet. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard my father's voice, worthless. It echoed with the clarity of a bell. It wasn't just the word, it was the satisfaction in his tone. He had enjoyed saying it. He had savored the weight of it in his mouth like a piece of expensive steak. I turned over, punching my pillow. The shame was a physical thing, a heat in my chest that wouldn't dissipate. But by 3 in the morning, the shame began to cool, hardening into something brittle and sharp. Anger. I looked at the nightstand. The cream-colored card sat there next to my alarm clock. "Coffee? Tomorrow?" I reached out and picked it up. It felt heavy for a piece of paper. My first instinct, the one conditioned by 3 decades of being told I was unimportant, was that it was a mistake, or worse, a pity invite. The senator had seen a sad, middle-aged woman being verbally battered by her father and wanted to offer me a pep talk and a pamphlet on self-esteem. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to be a project. I hovered over the trash can, my fingers pinching the corner of the card, but then I remembered the way she had looked at me. "You look for the rot." That wasn't pity, that was recognition. I didn't sleep. At 6 in the morning, I showered, dressed in my most severe navy blazer, and drove to the address on the card. It wasn't a power lunch spot. It was a bakery on the south side of the city, a place with mismatched chairs and the smell of burnt sugar. When I walked in, Senator Eleanor Caldwell was already there, sitting in a booth in the back corner. She was reading a newspaper, an actual physical newspaper, and drinking black coffee from a thick ceramic mug. There were no aides, no security detail that I could see. Just a woman in a gray turtleneck who looked like she could dismantle a person with a single sentence. I approached the table. She looked up, folded the paper, and gestured to the seat opposite her. "You showed up," she said. "I was curious." I said, sliding into the booth. "Curiosity is a survival trait," she said. "Coffee?" I ordered a black coffee. I didn't know what to do with my hands, so I clasped them on top of the table. "Senator," I started. "Eleanor," she corrected. "We are off the clock." "Eleanor," I said, testing the name. "I appreciate the invitation, but I have to ask, why?" She didn't dodge the question. She took a sip of her coffee, her eyes scanning my face. "Because I know your father, Violet, not personally. But I know the type. I know the circle he runs in. And I saw something last night that didn't fit the narrative. What narrative? That you are the weak link, she said. That is what he tells people. You know. When he is trying to secure a loan or impress a client, he talks about his brilliant daughter, Sarah, and then he sighs about his burden. Violet, the one who needs help, the one who just can't quite launch. My stomach twisted. Hearing it from a stranger was worse than hearing it from him. It made it real. It made it public record. He has been saying that for years. I said, my voice tight. I know, she said, but last night, I saw a woman who ran a crisis response while her father sat there worried about his appetizer. That tells me the narrative is a lie. And if he is lying about that, I wonder what else he is lying about. I stiffened. I am not here to gossip about my family. I am not interested in gossip, she said, her voice sharpening. I am interested in mechanics. You work in compliance. You see how money moves. I nodded slowly. Yes, tell me, she said, leaning forward. In your experience, when a respectable organization wants to hide a liability, say, a safety violation or a missed environmental test, how do they do it? It was a test. I could feel it. She wasn't asking for general knowledge. She was asking to see how my brain worked. They don't erase it, I said, slipping into work mode. That leaves a gap. Auditors look for gaps. Instead, they dilute it. They bury the liability inside a larger, boring transaction. They rename it. A safety fine becomes a consulting fee or miscellaneous administrative overhead. They split the cost across 4 different quarters so it never hits the threshold for a manual review. They make it look so dull that no one bothers to click the folder. She smiled. A small, tight smile. And if they need to pay someone off? She asked. They use a vendor. I said, a third-party LLC, usually one with a generic name like Summit Solutions or Riverfront Holdings. The vendor bills for strategic advising. The company pays the invoice. The vendor pays the person. The company technically never paid a bribe. They paid a vendor for services rendered. She sat back, looking satisfied. You understand the plumbing, she said. It is my job. I said, I am drafting a bill. Violet, it targets a specific loophole in municipal contracting. Specifically, how healthcare vendors and developers use pass-through entities to bypass oversight on city projects. My pulse kicked up. That was specific, very specific. Why tell me this? I asked. Because the language in these contracts is designed to be unreadable, she said. My staff is bright, but they are policy wonks. They think in ideals. I need someone who thinks in invoices. I need someone who knows where the bodies are buried because they have spent 10 years staring at the graveyard. She reached into her bag and pulled out a thick manila envelope. She placed it on the table. These are public records, she said. Meeting minutes, budget proposals, vendor lists for the River District redevelopment project. Nothing classified, nothing illegal to possess. I just want you to read them. And do what? Tell me if you see a pattern, she said. Tell me if the plumbing looks familiar. I looked at the envelope. It felt radioactive. I am not a whistleblower. Eleanor, I said, I am not an activist. I like my boring life. I like paying my rent. I saw what happened to the last person at my company who flagged a VP's expense account. They didn't fire him. They moved his desk to the basement and stopped inviting him to meetings until he quit. I am risk-averse. I know, she said. That is why I'm asking you. You are not a crusader. You are practical. I don't need a hero. Violet, heroes get reckless. I need an analyst. I hesitated. I looked at the envelope, then at her. If I do this, I said, I do it on my own time. No official title. No paper trail linking me to your office. I am just a citizen reading public documents. Agreed, she said. And, I added, feeling a sudden surge of defiance, I am not doing this to help you win an election. She raised an eyebrow. Why are you doing it, then? I thought about my father's face. I thought about the word worthless. Because I am tired of people thinking I'm stupid. I said, she nodded, that is a powerful motivator. I took the envelope. The office felt different when I arrived at 9. The hum of the lights seemed predatory. I sat at my desk, hiding the manila envelope in the bottom drawer beneath my stash of granola bars and spare tights. I tried to focus on the daily audit queue, but the numbers swam before my eyes. Around 11, my supervisor, Greg, stopped by my cubicle. Greg was a decent man, a soft-spoken guy who coached Little League and hated conflict. He looked uncomfortable. "Violet, got a minute?" he asked, leaning against the fabric wall of my cube. "Sure. Greg, what is it?" He lowered his voice. "Everything okay at home?" I frowned. "Yes. Why?" He shifted his weight. "It is probably nothing, but HR got a flag this morning, an external background check request." My heart stopped. A background check? For what? "That is the thing," Greg said. "It wasn't a standard employment check. It was a priority rush inquiry. Usually, we only see those when someone is applying for a government clearance or, well, when they are being investigated. The system flags it to us automatically." "Who requested it?" I asked. My voice barely a whisper. It was anonymized. He said, "A third-party data firm," but it was comprehensive. "Violet, credit, criminal, education, the works. I just wanted to give you a heads up. If you are applying for other jobs, you might want to tell them to be a little more subtle. People are asking questions upstairs." I felt a cold prickle of sweat on my back. I wasn't applying for other jobs. Thanks, Greg. I said, "I am not looking. It must be a mistake. Identity theft. Maybe?" "I will look into it," he nodded, looking relieved to be done with the conversation. "Keep me posted. We value you here. Violet, hate to lose you to some misunderstanding." He walked away. I sat frozen. I had coffee with the senator at 7 in the morning. By 11, someone had run a deep dive background check on me. That wasn't a coincidence. That was a reflex. I barely made it to lunch. At noon, my phone rang. It was my mother. "Violet, darling." Her voice was chirpy, bright, completely at odds with the tension of the previous night. "I was just calling to check on you. You left so abruptly last night." I held the phone away from my ear for a second, staring at it. I had a headache. "Mom," I said, and Dad was being himself. "Oh, pish." She said, "You know how he is. He is just under so much pressure right now. The business is at a critical juncture." He didn't mean it. "Violet, you know he loves you. He just expresses it poorly. He called me worthless." "Mom?" In public. He was venting. She insisted, "He actually feels terrible today. He told me this morning. Ellen, I hope Violet knows I only push her because I see her potential." I almost laughed. It was such a clumsy lie. My father had never apologized for anything in his life. If he was backtracking, it was because he was scared. "Is that why you are calling?" I asked. "To tell me he loves me?" "Well, that, and to share some good news," she said. "Dad thinks there is a big opportunity coming up for the family. A financial windfall. He wants to make sure everyone is on the same page. We are all going to be very comfortable. Violet, he wants to set up a trust for you. A trust. For me. The daughter he despised." "That sounds nice," I said, keeping my voice flat. "It is. We just need to stick together. Family first. Right? Family first," I repeated. I hung up with a trembling hand. They were circling the wagons. They knew the senator had spoken to me. They didn't know what was said, but they were terrified. The bribe of the trust was the carrot. The background check was the stick. 2 hours later, my sister Sarah texted, "Brunch Sunday? My treat? Mimosas and gossip. Miss you. XO." I stared at the screen. Sarah never bought me brunch. Sarah usually forgot my birthday until 3 days later. I typed back, "Sure. Where?" She picked a trendy spot downtown. Naturally, when I arrived on Sunday, she was already there, wearing oversized sunglasses and a dress that cost more than my monthly take-home pay. She stood up and hugged me, a cloud of expensive perfume enveloping me. "Vi, you look so serious," she said, pulling back. "You need a drink." We sat down. She ordered a pitcher of mimosas. I ordered ice water. She chatted for 20 minutes about her new job. Her boyfriend. Her Pilates instructor. It was a performance. I watched her, noticing the way her eyes kept flicking to my face, gauging my reaction. She was nervous. "So," she said finally, leaning in. "Dad said the craziest thing happened after you left dinner. The senator?" I took a sip of water. "What about her?" "She came up to you," Sarah said, her eyes wide. "What did she want? Did she recognize you from somewhere?" "She just wanted to ask about the incident with the woman," I said. "She was impressed with how the staff handled it." Sarah frowned. "That's it? She gave you a card?" "Vi, Dad saw it. She gave me the number for her constituent services office." I lied, in case I wanted to file a commendation for the restaurant manager. Sarah studied me. She didn't believe me. "You know," she said, lowering her voice, "Dad is really worried about you. He thinks you might be vulnerable to influence." "Influence? Politicians are snakes." "Vi, they use people. Dad is afraid she might try to use you to get to him, because of his connections in the development world." I felt a cold anger settle in my gut. My father's ego was so massive, he thought a state senator was recruiting his disappointment of a daughter just to get a meeting with him. "I don't think Dad is on her radar." "Sarah," I said. "Oh, he is," Sarah insisted. "He is a player. Vi, you just don't see it because you are not in that world. But listen, if she contacts you again, you need to tell us. We have to protect the family interests. Dad has some sensitive deals in the pipeline. We can't have you accidentally saying something that complicates things." There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. "I won't complicate anything." "Sarah," I said. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Her palm was damp. "I know you won't. You are a good sister, even if you are a little intense sometimes." I pulled my hand away. I went home feeling dirty. The coordination was obvious. Mom played the heart, Sarah played the spy, and Dad played the hammer. I walked into my apartment and locked the door. I took the manila envelope out of the drawer, but I couldn't focus on it. My mind was stuck on Greg's warning, a priority rush inquiry. If they were checking me, what were they afraid of me finding? I sat down at my laptop. I wasn't a hacker, but I was a compliance officer. I knew how to navigate public databases. First, I went to the credit bureaus. I requested my full annual credit report. It took 10 minutes to verify my identity. I clicked download. The PDF opened. I scrolled past the student loans I had paid off, the car loan I had cleared, the credit card with the low limit. Then I stopped. Under the section labeled Revolving Real Estate Accounts, there was an entry I didn't recognize. Home Equity Line of Credit. Lender, River Valley Regional Bank. Opened. 4 years ago. Limit, $150,000. Status, open. Current balance, $2,000. I stared at the screen. I didn't own a home 4 years ago. I didn't own a home now. I rented a 600-square-foot box. I looked at the address associated with the loan. 412 Oak Creek Lane. My breath caught in my throat. I knew that address. It wasn't my parents' house. It was a small, dilapidated rental property on the edge of the town where we grew up, near the old industrial park. My father had owned it decades ago, used it as a storage facility for his old consulting firm before he moved to the city. I thought he had sold it years ago. According to this report, not only did he still own it, but my name was attached to the deed, and someone pretending to be me, had taken out $150,000 against it. I looked at the payment history. The payments were regular, made monthly from an account I didn't recognize. The balance had been paid down recently, aggressively, bringing it to almost zero. It was a stash house, a financial stash house. My name, my credit score, his debt. I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just mean. This was criminal fraud. If that money was used for something illegal, I was on the hook. I was the face of the debt. I picked up my phone. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely dial. I called my father. He answered on the second ring. "Well, look who it is," he said. His voice was booming, confident again. "Did your mother tell you about the trust?" "Dad?" I said. My voice sounded strange, hollow. I am looking at my credit report. Silence. Instant. Heavy silence. Why are you looking at that? He asked. His tone dropped an octave. There is a HELOC. Dad, on the Oak Creek property, in my name, $150,000. Silence again. Then, a sigh. Violet, you are being hysterical. I am not being hysterical, I shouted. I never signed for this. That is fraud. Dad, you forged my signature. Don't use words you don't understand. He snapped. It was a formality. We needed liquidity for a bridge loan a few years back. Your credit was sitting there doing nothing. It was a business decision. The loan is paid, isn't it? That is not the point. You used my identity. We protected you, he roared. We put that asset in your name to build your portfolio. You should be thanking me. Do you have any idea how hard I worked to keep this family afloat? To pay for your sister's wedding? To pay for your mother's lifestyle? You stole from me. I said, you put me at risk. Oh, grow up, Violet. You are such a child. Everything is a crisis with you. You are paranoid because you are a failure. You look for problems because you can't create solutions. I am going to the bank. Dad, I said, I am going to report it. The line went quiet, truly quiet. When he spoke again, his voice was ice cold. If you do that, Violet, you are done. I will cut you off. You will never see your mother again. You will be alone. You will be the crazy daughter who tried to destroy her family because she was jealous of her sister. I will ruin your reputation in this town before you even file the paperwork. I held the phone. I looked around my small, clean apartment. I looked at the manila envelope from the senator. I realized something then. The fear was gone. The hurt was gone. He wasn't protecting me. He had never protected me. He had kept me small, kept me insecure, kept me worthless, so that I wouldn't look too closely at the paperwork. I wasn't a daughter to him. I was a shell company. I was a shield he could hide behind. He thought threatening me with exile would break me. He didn't realize that he had just set me free. You are right, Dad, I said quietly. I am? He asked, sounding suspicious. Yes, I have been looking for problems. I didn't wait for his response. I hung up the phone. I sat there for a long time in the silence. Then, I reached for the manila envelope. I opened the clasp and dumped the documents onto my kitchen table. I wasn't going to just read them. I was going to memorize them. I pulled my laptop closer, opened a new spreadsheet, and started typing. The weekend became a blur of paper dust and stale coffee. I didn't leave my apartment. Instead, I turned my living room into an excavation site. I pulled every box I had stored in the back of my closet. Old tax returns, bank statements, the Tupperware container full of mail I had saved from my college years. I needed a baseline. I needed to know exactly where my identity ended and my father's fiction began. I found the smoking gun at 3 o'clock on Sunday afternoon. It was in a misfiled stack of property tax assessments I had retrieved from the county clerk's online portal. I had been searching for the Oak Creek address, the one attached to the fraudulent home equity line of credit. I found the deed transfer, dated 6 years ago, but it wasn't just the house. There was a second document attached to the parcel ID. It was a formation document for a limited liability company called VMR Holdings. VMR. Violet Marie Reed. I stared at the screen. My stomach did a slow, sick roll. I downloaded the Articles of Organization. I scrolled to the signature page. There, on the line for managing member, was my name, Violet Reed. It looked like my signature. To a bank teller or a clerk glancing at it for 2 seconds, it was perfect. The V had the right sharp angle. The R looped high. But I looked closer. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. I knew how I signed my name. I had signed thousands of compliance audits. When I signed the letter E, I always lifted the pen slightly at the end, a habit from learning cursive in 3rd grade. This signature didn't lift. The ink flowed in one continuous, confident stroke. It was heavy. It was aggressive. It was my father's hand. Wearing my name like a costume, I printed the document. I held it up to the light. He hadn't just used my credit. He had incorporated a business in my name. VMR. Holdings wasn't just a shell. It was a container. And if he had opened it, he could put anything he wanted inside it. Debt, liability, lawsuits, and I would be the one holding the bag. I needed professional eyes. I couldn't go to the family attorney. He was my father's golf partner. I needed someone who didn't care about the Reed family reputation. I found Elias Thorne through a legal aid forum. His office was in a strip mall next to a dry cleaner, 10 miles outside the city center. The waiting room smelled of lemon polish and old carpet. Elias himself was a small man with glasses so thick they magnified his eyes into owl-like proportions. He didn't offer me water. He just took the stack of papers I had printed and read them in silence for 20 minutes. Finally, he looked up. "You say you didn't sign this?" he asked. His voice was dry, like crumbling paper. "No," I said, "that is not my signature. And I have never heard of VMR Holdings." He tapped the document with a yellow fingernail. "This is art," he said. I blinked. "Excuse me?" "It is technically sloppy," he explained, "but strategically so. Look here. The registered agent is a P.O. box in a jurisdiction that doesn't require immediate disclosure of member lists. The annual reports were filed late, paying the penalty fee each time." "Why would they do that?" I asked. "To look incompetent," he said. "If this company gets audited, or if it gets sued, the defense will be that the owner, you, is disorganized, a mess. It creates a narrative of negligence rather than malice. If this blows up, you look like a fool who lost track of her paperwork, not a criminal mastermind." He leaned back in his creaky chair. "Whoever set this up wanted a shield. Ms. Reed, but not a hard shield, a soft one that absorbs the impact and crumbles. You are the crumple zone." The phrase hit me hard. The crumple zone, the part of the car designed to be destroyed to save the passengers in the expensive seats. "Can we dissolve it?" I asked. "Can we prove it is fraud?" Elias frowned. "We can, but the moment we file a challenge, the clock starts. The bank will freeze the assets, the state will investigate, and whoever created this, your father, you assume, will be notified immediately. It is an act of war. Are you ready for war?" I thought about the dinner. I thought about the way my father had buttered his roll while calling me worthless. "Not yet." I said, "I need to know what is inside the company first." "Smart," Elias said. He handed the papers back to me. "Find out what VMR Holdings actually owns, because nobody builds a crumple zone unless they are expecting a crash." 2 days later, a courier delivered a thick envelope to my desk at work. It had no return address, but the label was typed in the same font as the senator's business card. I took it to the break room, my heart hammering against my ribs. I sat in the corner, away from the microwave where the sales team was heating up lunch, and slit the envelope open. It was a packet of minutes from the City Planning Committee, dated 3 years ago. Attached to the front was a sticky note. Read page 42. "Check the donor list." I flipped to page 42. It was a transcript of a public hearing regarding the Riverfront Revitalization Project. This was the crown jewel of the city's development plan, a massive overhaul of the old industrial district into luxury condos and retail space. It was the project my sister Sarah had been bragging about, the one her new job was connected to. I scanned the text. The committee was discussing the displacement of existing small businesses. The language was sterile: relocation assistance, zoning adjustments, eminent domain feasibility. Then I saw the list of private donors who had contributed to the Community Impact Fund to help sell the project to the public. Third on the list, Cyrus Gentry. I froze. I knew that name. Cyrus Gentry was a real estate developer who had been a fixture at my parents' holiday parties for as long as I could remember. He was a loud man with a red face who always drank too much scotch and told jokes that made my mother laugh nervously. He was my father's oldest friend, and right below his name, in smaller print, consulting services provided by Reed Management Group. My father was on the payroll, But that wasn't the smoking gun. The smoking gun was in the details of the mitigation efforts. The document listed a series of environmental surveys that had been commissioned to ensure the land was safe for residential building. The surveys were marked as pending. I flipped to the next meeting's minutes. Dated 2 months later. Environmental impact. Waived, due to prior industrial clearance. Waived. They had skipped the soil testing. I put the papers down. My hands were trembling. In my line of work, you didn't waive compliance on an industrial site unless you already knew what you were going to find, and you didn't want it on the record. I needed to see the machine in action. The papers were just echoes. I needed to see the mouths that spoke the words. The City Oversight Committee held its monthly meeting on a Tuesday evening. I wore a gray hoodie and glasses I didn't need. Sitting in the very back row of the municipal auditorium, the room smelled of floor wax and boredom. There were maybe 30 people in the audience, mostly retirees, and a few exhausted-looking journalists. The stage was dominated by a long curved table where the committee members sat. They looked like statues, their faces illuminated by the glow of their laptops. The agenda was dull. Zoning variances for a parking lot, a dispute over a fence height. I watched the rhythm of it. A citizen would stand up to complain. The committee would nod politely. The chairman would thank them for their time, and then they would vote exactly how they had planned to vote before the meeting started. It was theater. Then, item number 4 came up. Riverfront Project. Phase 3 Budget Allocation. A slick young man in a suit approached the microphone. He had a PowerPoint presentation. He talked about synergy and urban renewal. He showed renderings of happy families walking dogs on pristine green lawns. When he finished, the chairman asked for public comment. A man stood up from the third row. He was older, wearing a sweater vest that had seen better days. He walked to the microphone with a limp. "State your name for the record." The chairman droned. "Arthur Henderson," the man said, "formerly of the city comptroller's office." I leaned forward. The air in the room shifted. The committee members stopped typing. "I am looking at the mitigation line items, Mr. Henderson said. His voice was shaky but loud. 3 years ago, $2 million was earmarked for soil remediation in Sector 4. That money was dispersed. But I drove by Sector 4 yesterday. It is still a gravel pit. There is no equipment. There is no remediation. Where did the money go?" The chairman sighed. "Mr. Henderson, we have discussed this. The funds were reallocated to the architectural planning phase due to unexpected design costs. It is all in the revised budget." "Reallocated?" Henderson snapped. "You can't reallocate safety funds to buy fancy blueprints. That soil was part of the old chemical plant. If you build condos on top of it without cleaning it, you are poisoning people. Your time is up." "Mr. Henderson," the chairman said. "I am not done," Henderson shouted. The microphone cut out. The room went silent. "Mr. Henderson stood there, mouthing words that no one could hear. 2 security guards stepped forward. He glared at the committee, turned, and limped back to his seat. "Thank you," the chairman said, his voice smooth. "Next speaker." And then, my father stood up. I pressed myself back into the shadows of the corner. I hadn't seen him come in. He was wearing his best navy suit, the one he wore to weddings and funerals. He walked to the podium not like a citizen, but like he owned the building. "Robert Reed," he said, representing the local business coalition. The chairman smiled. "Welcome, Mr. Reed. Always good to see you. I just want to speak in support of the current timeline." My father said. His voice was rich, commanding. It filled the room. "We have to look at the big picture. Obstructionists," he cast a pitying glance at Mr. Henderson, "want to stall progress with red tape and paranoia. But this city is dying for investment. We have partners ready to build. We have families waiting for homes. We cannot let bureaucratic nitpicking slow down the future." He turned to the audience. He spread his hands. "I have lived here for 40 years, he said. "I raised my daughters here. I want what is best for this community, and I trust this committee to make the right call." There was scattered applause. The committee members nodded like bobbleheads. I felt a wave of nausea. He was so good at it. He was the reasonable man, the pillar of the community. He was the one who made the corruption taste like civic duty. He wasn't just a loud man at dinner. He was the lubricant. He was the friendly face that allowed the machine to grind up people like Arthur Henderson. I slipped out the back door before the vote was taken. I couldn't breathe in there. The text came the next morning. Can you get away for lunch? 12:30. The Arboretum. North entrance. It was from the number on the card. I told my boss I had a dentist appointment. I drove to the Arboretum, a sprawling park on the north side of the city. It was raining lightly, a gray drizzle that kept the crowds away. I saw the senator standing under a large oak tree near the gate. She was wearing a trench coat and holding a large umbrella. She didn't wave. She just waited for me to walk up. You went to the hearing, she said. I did. I said, I saw my father. He is persuasive, isn't he? She asked. He is a liar. I said. She nodded. That is often the same thing in politics. She turned and started walking down the gravel path. I fell in step beside her. I have someone who wants to talk to you, she said. Who? A woman named Elena. She used to work for the construction firm handling the riverfront project. She won't talk to me. She thinks I will use her for a soundbite. She won't talk to the police. She thinks they are bought. Why would she talk to me? I asked. Because I told her who you are, the senator said. I told her you are Robert Reed's daughter, and I told her you are angry. I stopped walking. You used me as bait. I used you as a bridge. Violet, she is scared. She needs to know that someone on the inside, or adjacent to the inside, is willing to listen. I looked at the wet gravel. I didn't want to meet a whistleblower. I wanted to go back to my desk and audit invoices for hip replacements. Where is she? I asked. She is sitting on the bench by the duck pond. Just around the curve. I will wait here. She won't speak if I'm there. No cameras, no recording devices. Just listen. I took a deep breath. I walked around the curve. The bench was wet. Sitting on the dry patch in the middle was a woman who looked nothing like a corporate insider. She was young, maybe 25, wearing an oversized parka and clutching a travel mug. She looked like a graduate student who hadn't slept in a week. Elena? I asked softly. She jumped. Her head snapped up. Her eyes were wide, darting to the sides to see if I was alone. Are you Violet? She whispered. I nodded. I sat on the other end of the bench, leaving 2 feet of space between us. The senator said you wanted to talk. She laughed. A brittle, sharp sound. I don't want to talk. I want to disappear. But I can't sleep. Tell me why you can't sleep, I said. Elena looked at the pond. A duck was paddling in circles, oblivious to the rain. I was the project coordinator, she said, for the site prep. My job was to track the vendor invoices. You know, make sure the gravel guys got paid. The fence guys got paid. I nodded. I know that job. About 4 years ago, we got a work order for Sector 4. That's the old chemical plant site. The order was for soil removal. Dig out 6 feet of topsoil, haul it to a hazardous waste facility, replace it with clean fill. It was a $3 million job. That sounds standard. I said, the money went out. Elena said. She turned to look at me. Her face was pale. The invoices came in. Vantage Hauling, ClearPath Logistics. I processed them. The checks were cut. But no trucks ever came, she said. I stared at her. What do you mean? I was on site. Violet, every day. I sat in the trailer. I saw the gate log. No hauling trucks entered Sector 4. Not one. For 3 months. I paid invoices for dirt that never moved. Where did the money go? I asked. She shivered. Vantage, Hauling isn't a trucking company. It's a paper company. I looked it up later. It is registered to a P.O. box in Delaware. The money went into a black hole. And the soil? Still there. She said, they just graded it flat and put grass seed over it. They buried the report that said it was full of arsenic and lead. They are going to build playgrounds on top of it. I felt the blood drain from my face. Did you tell anyone? I told my boss. She said, he told me it was a clerical error and that I should focus on my own work. 2 weeks later, I was laid off. Restructuring. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. I kept a copy of one of the invoices. She said, "Just one. I was too scared to take more." She handed it to me. It was a standard invoice form. Vantage hauling. Services rendered. Environmental remediation. Sector 4. Amount. $200,000. I looked at the address for Vantage hauling. It was a P.O. box. But then I looked at the routing number for the wire transfer instructions at the bottom. I recognized that bank. River Valley Regional Bank. The same bank that held the fraudulent home equity line of credit in my name. My mind raced, connecting the dots with terrifying speed. My father's stash house on Oak Creek Lane. It was less than a mile from the riverfront project. The HELOC in my name, $150,000. The missing mitigation funds. My father wasn't just skimming money, he was the laundry. If the money for the fake cleanup had to go somewhere to look legitimate, it had to be washed. They needed entities. They needed accounts. VMR Holdings. What if VMR Holdings wasn't just holding debt? What if it was one of the pass-throughs? What if my name was on the checks that paid for the poison to stay in the ground? I looked at Elena. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because I saw your father on the news last night," she said. "At the hearing. He talked about community." She spat the word out. I thought, if that is her father, maybe she knows where the money went. Maybe she knows who really owns Vantage Hauling. I folded the invoice and put it in my pocket. "I don't know," I said, "but I'm going to find out." I walked back to the senator. She was still waiting under the tree. "Well?" she asked. "It is worse than a loophole." "Eleanor," I said, "they stole the cleanup money. The land is toxic. And I think my family helped them hide the cash." She didn't look surprised. She looked grim. "Can we prove it?" "I have an invoice," I said, "and I have a suspicion. But suspicion isn't evidence." "So what do you want to do?" she asked. I looked at the rain falling on the path. Part of me wanted to run. I wanted to go to my apartment, pack a bag, and drive until I hit the ocean. I wanted to change my name. I wanted to pretend I was anyone but Violet Reed, if I stayed. I would have to destroy him, not just embarrass him, but dismantle him. I would have to be the one who put the handcuffs on my own father. I thought about the word worthless. I thought about the arsenic in the soil where children would play. I thought about the way he had looked at me across the dinner table. Like I was nothing more than a bad investment. "I can't be the face of this." I said, "Not yet. If I come forward now, he will spin it. He will say I am a disgruntled daughter, mentally unstable, lying for attention. He has spent 30 years painting me as the weak one. People will believe him. Then how? I will be the mechanic," I said. "I will pull the records. I will map the money. I will find the link between the cleanup funds and the accounts he opened in my name. I will give you the pattern, and then, when the trap is set, you spring it. You and the regulators. I stay in the background." She looked at me for a long moment. "You know that might not work forever," she said. "Eventually, your name will come out. VMR. Holdings is in your name, I know," I said. "But by then, I will have the proof that I was the victim, not the villain." She extended her hand. "Welcome to the team." "Violet," I didn't shake her hand. I kept my hands in my pockets, gripping the crumpled invoice. "I am not on your team," I said. "I am just cleaning up the mess." I turned and walked away, back toward my car. The rain was coming down harder now, washing the dust off the city. But I knew it wouldn't be enough. Some stains you had to scrub out yourself. The shift at my office happened on a Thursday, 3 days after I met the whistleblower in the rain. It started with the access badge. When I tapped it against the sensor for the server room, a room I had entered every day for 5 years to pull hard copy archives, it blinked red. Access denied. I tried it again. Red light. A small, chirping error noise that sounded mocking. I went back to my desk, assuming it was a glitch. My supervisor, Greg, was already waiting for me. He wasn't leaning against my cubicle wall this time. He was standing inside it, his hands clasped in front of him like a funeral director. Violet, he said, can we walk to the conference room? I left my purse. I followed him down the gray hallway. I noticed that people stopped typing as we passed. They looked at their screens, intently, studiously. The silence was thick. In the conference room, Greg didn't sit. We are making some changes to the audit assignments, he said. He didn't look me in the eye. He looked at a spot on the wall just above my left shoulder. Management feels you have been running hard on the Metro General account. We are worried about burnout. I haven't missed a deadline in 3 years. Greg, I said, I know, but we have noticed signs of stress. For your own well-being, we are rotating you off the sensitive files. We are moving you to the Archive Reconciliation Project. Archive Reconciliation was busy work. It was counting staples. It was the basement. Who is taking my files? I asked. We brought in a consultant, Greg said, to help with the transition. His name is Simon. He is starting today. I walked back to my desk. A man was already sitting in my visitor chair. He was younger than me, wearing a suit that was too shiny and a watch that was too big. He had a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Violet, he said, standing up. Simon, great to meet you. I hear you are the wizard around here. He didn't wait for me to answer. He started picking up stacks of my files. Just getting the lay of the land, he said. Hey, random question. I saw on your intake form you went to St. Jude's. Did you know the Caldwells? I froze. The Caldwells? Yeah, he said, flipping through a folder casually. Senator Caldwell's family. I heard your dad and her go way back. Small world, right? I hadn't put my high school on any intake form Simon would have access to, and my father didn't go way back with the senator. He was terrified of her. Simon was fishing. He wasn't a consultant. He was a cleaner. I smiled at him. It was a tight, plastic smile. I think you have the wrong family. Simon, I said. I sat down and logged into my computer. My access to the shared drive was gone. My email archive was restricted to the last 30 days. They were scrubbing me. I didn't panic. Panic is for people who don't know the rules. I opened a blank Word document, the only thing I could still use freely. I typed the date. I typed the time. I typed 9:15 a.m., access revoked. Consultant Simon asks about Senator Caldwell, connection immediately. I minimized the window. I pulled my personal phone out of my purse and placed it face down on the desk. Opening the voice memo app, if they wanted to watch me, I would watch them back. The pressure didn't stay at the office. It seeped into the cracks of my personal life like water finding a leak. My mother called 2 nights later. It was late, past 10. I was sitting on my floor, surrounded by the documents I had retrieved from the public library before my work access was cut. Violet? Her voice was wet, thick with tears. Hi, Mom. I am sitting here looking at old photo albums. She said, do you remember that trip we took to the Cape? You were 7. You had those little red sandals. I rubbed my eyes. Mom, it is late. I just miss you, she said. I feel like we are losing you. After everything we sacrificed. Violet, we did everything to give you a good start. The tutors, the lessons. Dad worked so hard. I didn't say anything. I let her talk. I wanted to see where the script went. He is just worried about you, she continued. He says you seem paranoid. He says you are making up stories about finances. He forged my signature. Mom, I said, that is not a story. Oh, Violet, don't be so dramatic. He was moving assets. It is complicated business. You wouldn't understand the nuance, but to attack him? After he paid for your apartment? I pay for my apartment, I said. She sighed, a long, shuddering breath. We just want you to be safe, she said. That city can be dangerous, especially when you are walking around alone in parks in the rain. You could catch a cold, or worse. I went still. The only time I had been in a park in the rain recently was my meeting with the whistleblower at the Arboretum. I hadn't told anyone. I hadn't posted it. I hadn't even driven my own car. I had taken a cab to a coffee shop 3 blocks away and walked. How did you know I was in a park? Mom? I asked. My voice was very quiet. There was a pause on the line. A sharp, sudden silence where she realized she had gone off script. I assumed, she stammered. You always liked parks, and it has been raining all week. You said walking around alone in parks in the rain. That is very specific. Violet, you are being weird again. I have to go. Dad is calling me. The line clicked dead. I stared at the phone. They weren't just gossiping. They were having me followed. My father had hired someone, maybe the same people who ran the background check, to physically track me. I went to my window and looked down at the street. A dark sedan was parked 3 spots down from the entrance. It had been there yesterday, too. I closed the blinds. I took a picture of the car through the slats. I wrote down the time. I couldn't confront my father yet. He was a wall. I needed to find a crack. I drove to my sister's office the next day during her lunch break. Sarah worked in a glass-walled building downtown, doing brand management for a luxury retail group. She looked surprised when I walked into the lobby. But she came down. Vi, is everything okay? You look intense. We need to talk. I said, not here. We walked to a concrete bench in the plaza outside. The wind was whipping around the skyscrapers, messing up Sarah's perfect hair. What is going on? She asked. Mom said you were being abusive on the phone. Mom slipped up. Sarah, I said, she knew I was at the Arboretum on Tuesday. Sarah rolled her eyes. So? Mom stalks your location on your phone. She does it to me, too. I turned off my location sharing 3 years ago. I said, Sarah stopped fixing her hair. She looked at me. And I know about the HELOC, I said, and VMR Holdings, and the credit line. Sarah looked away. She looked at the fountain in the center of the plaza. She bit her lip, a nervous habit she had since she was a teenager. I need you to tell me the truth. Sarah. Why me? Why did he put it all in my name? She didn't answer for a long time. She crossed her arms, shivering in the wind. He is broke. Vi, she said finally. Her voice was small. What? Dad, he is leveraged to the hilt. The consulting business dried up 5 years ago. He has been borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. He owes everyone, the bank, private lenders, even Cyrus Gentry. Cyrus Gentry, I repeated. The developer. Yes, Dad promised him he could get the environmental waivers for the riverfront project. That was the deal. Dad gets the waivers. Gentry covers Dad's debts, but they needed a vehicle to move the money, so he created VMR Holdings. I said. Sarah nodded. She was crying now. Silent tears that ruined her makeup. Why me? Sarah? Why not you? You are the successful one. You are the one he brags about. She laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. That is exactly why. Vi, I am public. I have press releases. I have a husband with a trust fund. If Dad opened a sketchy LLC in my name, people would look. My husband's lawyers would look. She turned to me. Her eyes were full of pity, and that hurt more than the betrayal. You are invisible. Vi, you have always been the quiet one, the one with the boring job and the cheap car. No one looks at you. You were the safest option because nobody cares what Violet Reed does. I felt a crack inside my chest. It wasn't a breaking heart. It was the breaking of an illusion. I had spent my whole life thinking my father was hard on me because he wanted me to be better. I thought he criticized me because he saw potential I wasn't using. But he didn't see potential. He saw empty space. He saw a storage unit. I wasn't a daughter. I was a hiding place. Does Mom know? I asked. Sarah nodded. She thinks he is doing it to save the family legacy. She thinks he is a hero. I stood up. The wind felt cold, but I didn't shiver. Thank you. Sarah, I said. Vi, wait. What are you going to do? I am going to stop being invisible. I said. The senator called me that afternoon. Violet, she said, I need you to come in. Through the service entrance. I went. Her office was impressive. All mahogany and flags. But she didn't meet me there. She met me in a small conference room down the hall. We have enough to move, she said. The invoice you got from the whistleblower? It matches a transfer record we pulled from the Municipal Oversight Committee. We can link Vantage hauling to the remediation fraud. Good. I said, I want to bring you on board. Violet. Officially. I looked at her. What do you mean? I am creating a special task force on municipal corruption. I want you as the lead policy advisor. It comes with a salary, a title, and protection. You would be working for the state. Your father couldn't touch you. It was a lifeline, a way out of my dead-end job, a way to be important, a way to be powerful. I shook my head. No, Violet, be reasonable. You are exposed. I am not a politician. Eleanor, I don't want to spin this. I don't want to be a prop in your re-election campaign. I want the truth. I will give you the truth, she said. I looked at her. I looked at the polished table. I will testify. I said, confidential testimony to the ethics committee. I will walk them through the paper trail. I will explain VMR Holdings, but I won't join your staff, and I won't go on TV. She looked disappointed, but she nodded. Fair enough. We have a hearing scheduled for next Thursday. I will subpoena you so it looks involuntary. It protects you from retaliation lawsuits. Thank you, I said. I left the office feeling heavier, not lighter. I had turned down safety. I had chosen the hard way. But the hard way got harder that night. I was at my kitchen table, reviewing the senator's public donor filings. I had started doing it out of habit. Compliance officer instincts. Trust but verify. I scrolled through the list of contributors to her Citizens for a Better Tomorrow PAC. It was mostly small businesses, unions, teachers. Then I saw it. A donation for $10,000. The legal maximum. CG Development Partners. I clicked on the filing details. The principal officer of CG Development Partners was Cyrus Gentry, the same man who was paying my father, the same man whose toxic soil was buried under the playground. I felt like I had been punched in the stomach. The senator was building a career on fighting the corruption loop, yet she was taking money from the man who invented it. Was she going to stop him? Or was she just using the scandal to squeeze him for more donations? Was my father the sacrificial lamb she and Gentry had agreed upon? Give me Robert Reed, and I will let the Riverfront project proceed. I was a pawn on a chessboard where both players were on the same side. I closed my laptop. My hands were shaking. I picked up my phone and texted Elias. My attorney, no more direct contact with the senator. All documents go through you. Do not leave me alone in a room with her. I couldn't trust the family. I couldn't trust the politician. I only had myself and a stack of paper. The next morning, an email pinged in my personal inbox. The subject line was, "Thinking of you. Uncle Jerry." Jerry was a man I hadn't seen in 10 years. He used to be my father's partner in the consulting firm before he retired to Florida. He was a kind man who used to sneak me candy when my father wasn't looking. I opened the email. "Hi, Violet. I heard some rumblings down here. Your dad called me asking about old hard drives. Made me curious. I looked through my backups. Found this. Thought you might want it for your scrapbook. Be safe, kiddo." Attached was a PDF. I opened it. It was an email chain from 5 years ago. From Robert Reed to City Planning Commission. Intake. Subject: Expedited waiver. Sector 4. Jim, we need this moved. Gentry is getting impatient. The soil is fine. We did a visual inspection. Just stamp the waiver and let's get the trucks rolling. I will handle the mitigation paperwork later. Don't make me call the mayor. I stared at the words. The soil is fine. He knew. He knew it wasn't tested. He pushed it through anyway. He used his influence to bypass the safety check, and then he used my name to hide the money that was supposed to clean it up. This wasn't negligence. This was malice. This was the smoking gun that proved he wasn't just a desperate debtor. He was the architect of the fraud. I saved the file. I encrypted it. I backed it up to 3 different cloud servers. Then I heard the pounding on my door. It wasn't a knock. It was a fist. "Violet, open this door." It was my father. I stood up. I walked to the door, but I didn't open it. I checked the peephole. He was standing there in the hallway. He wasn't alone. He had brought an audience. He was shouting loud enough for Mrs. Higgins in 4B and the young couple in 4C to hear. Violet, please. I know you are in there. We are worried about you. You are not answering your phone. He was playing the distraught father. He was building the narrative of my mental instability. She is having a breakdown. She won't let us in. I pulled my phone out. I opened the camera app and set it to record. I held it against my chest. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door. He was red-faced, panting slightly. When he saw me, he didn't attack. He slumped his shoulders, putting on a performance of relief. Oh, thank God. Violet, look at you. You look terrible. I looked fine. I was wearing jeans and a sweater. I was calm. What do you want? Dad? I asked. I want to help you, he shouted, stepping into the door frame so I couldn't close it. Your mother is sick with worry. You are making up these crazy stories. You are attacking the family. We think you need help. We think you need to see Doctor. Evans again. Doctor? Evans was the psychiatrist they sent me to when I was 16 because I didn't want to go to prom. I am not sick. Dad, I said. He lowered his voice, leaning in. The neighbors were peeking out of their doors now. You are sick. Violet, you are paranoid. And if you keep spreading these lies about me, about the business, you are going to get hurt. Do you understand? You are going to ruin yourself. I will have you committed if I have to protect you. He reached out to grab my arm. I stepped back. I raised the phone. I am recording this. Dad, I said. He froze. His eyes flicked to the phone, then back to my face. The mask slipped. The concern vanished, replaced by pure, cold rage. Put that away, he hissed. No, I said. I looked him in the eye. For the first time in 33 years, I didn't look down. I didn't flinch. I saw him for what he was. A small, scared man who had built a castle out of other people's credit scores. I know about the waiver. Dad. I said, I have the email to the Planning Commission. Just stamp it. His color drained away. He looked like a ghost. You don't know what you're doing. He stammered. You are destroying us. You are destroying the family. No. I said, I am saving myself. I stepped forward, forcing him to take a step back into the hallway. I am done. Dad, I am done being your shield. I am done being your stash house. I am done being worthless. I raised my voice so Mrs. Higgins could hear. Get away from my door. Do not come back. If you do, I will call the police and I will show them the recording. He stared at me. He opened his mouth to speak, to threaten, to charm, but nothing came out. He saw the phone. He saw the neighbors. He saw that the script had flipped. He turned around and walked away. He walked fast, almost running, disappearing down the stairwell. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I slid down to the floor. I wasn't crying. I was shaking, my adrenaline crashing, but my mind was clear. I had lost my family. I had lost my safety. The senator was compromised. The developer was powerful. My father was desperate. But I had the email, and I had my voice. I looked at the phone recording. 3:14 p.m. I hit save. The fluorescent lights of Elias Thorne's office were humming again, a low, persistent buzz that felt like the soundtrack to my new life. On the desk between us sat a stack of paperwork 3 inches thick. These were not the polite, corporate compliance forms I was used to filling out. These were weapons. Identity theft affidavit, Elias said, sliding the first document toward me. Dispute of liability, fraudulent account notice, and a formal cease and desist to VMR Holdings regarding the unauthorized use of your name. I picked up the pen. It was a cheap ballpoint, the kind you buy in packs of 50. It felt incredibly light for something that was about to bring down a house. Are you sure? Elias asked. He wasn't looking at the papers. He was looking at my hands. Once we file these with the bank and the credit bureaus, the machine starts. The bank's fraud unit is obligated by federal law to investigate within 30 days. They will freeze the accounts. They will contact the account holder. The account holder is my father. I said, technically. Elias corrected. The account holder is you, or the version of you he created. But yes, he is the one who will get the phone call, and since he is the one making the payments from an external source, the bank will trace that source. If the money coming in is dirty, they will flag it for money laundering. That is the point, I said. I signed my name. I made sure to lift the pen at the end of the E, just like I always did. The signature was small, neat, and indisputably mine. We spent the next 2 hours faxing, yes, faxing, the documents to the fraud departments of River Valley Regional Bank and the 3 major credit bureaus. Elias explained that faxing created a transmission confirmation that was harder to dispute than an email. It was old school. It was undeniable. By the time I left his office, the sun was setting. I sat in my car in the strip mall parking lot and watched the neon sign of the dry cleaner flicker on. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't happiness. It was the feeling of gravity shifting. For 33 years, I had been orbiting my father's planet, held in place by his gravity, his moods, his needs. I had just cut the gravity cable. The reaction was almost instant, though not from my father directly. The tremors started at the bank. 2 days later, I was at my desk at work, or what was left of my work. Since being removed from the audit team, I had been assigned to digital reorganization, which meant renaming thousands of PDF files in the archive. It was punishment, pure and simple. My phone rang at 10 in the morning. It was an unknown number. Violet Reed? A woman's voice asked. She sounded crisp, professional, and entirely humorless. Speaking, this is Detective Miller with the Financial Crimes Division. I am following up on a fraud report filed by your attorney regarding a home equity line of credit. Do you have a moment? I walked to the stairwell, the only place in the building with privacy. Yes, I said. We have contacted the bank. Detective Miller said, they have placed a hold on the line of credit. They are also reviewing the formation documents for the LLC you flagged. Ms. Reed, I need to ask you something directly. Did you, at any point, give verbal consent for a family member to manage these accounts? No, I said, because the bank manager indicates that your father, Robert Reed, is a long-standing client. He claims he has power of attorney. I felt a spike of cold rage. He had lied to the bank, too. I have never signed a power of attorney. I said, if he produces one, it is a forgery. Understood, she said. The tone of her voice changed. It became sharper. If that is the case, Ms. Reed, we are looking at bank fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. This is going to get very serious, very fast. The bank's compliance officer is already pulling the transaction history. They found some irregularities in the repayment source. Irregularities? Large cash deposits, she said. Structured to avoid reporting thresholds. Structuring. That was a federal crime. My father wasn't just sloppy. He was desperate. Do what you have to do. Detective, I said. I hung up. My hands were steady. When I went back to my desk, Simon, the consultant who had replaced me, was standing there. He was holding a file folder. He wasn't smiling today. Greg wants to see you, he said. Greg didn't look at me when I walked into his office. He was staring out the window at the parking lot. Sitting next to him was the vice president of HR, a woman named Karen, who I had spoken to exactly twice in 5 years. Have a seat. Violet, Karen said. Her voice was soft, the kind of voice you use when you are putting a pet to sleep. I sat. We have been reviewing the departmental goals. Karen said, and we have some concerns about your performance on the archive project. I started the project 2 days ago. I said, yes, she said, ignoring the logic. But we also feel there is a cultural mismatch. You seem distracted, unhappy, and given the sensitive nature of our business, we need our team to be fully focused. She slid a piece of paper across the desk. We want to offer you a choice, she said. You can take a voluntary leave of absence, 6 months, unpaid, but you keep your benefits. We can frame it as a sabbatical for personal reasons. Or, I asked, or we can initiate a performance improvement plan. she said. Which is a formal process. It goes on your permanent record. It was a classic force out. If I took the leave, I was silenced and sidelined. If I stayed, they would document every typo, every minute I was late, until they had cause to fire me. I looked at Greg. He was still staring out the window. He knew I was a good employee. He knew this was retaliation because someone powerful, maybe a donor to the hospital network, maybe someone connected to the senator or the developer, had made a phone call. I am not taking a leave, I said. Karen sighed. Violet, I really think, and I am not doing a performance improvement plan. I interrupted. I reached into my bag and pulled out the resignation letter I had typed the night before. I had dated it for today. I am resigning, effective immediately. I said. I placed the letter on top of her offer. Greg finally turned around. He looked tired. Violet, you don't have to do this today, he said. Yes, I do, I said. I can't work for a company that is more afraid of its vendors than it is of the truth. I stood up. I didn't pack a box. I didn't say goodbye to Simon. I walked out of the building, got into my car, and drove away. I had no job. I had no income. But for the first time in years, I didn't have a headache. The next morning, the subpoena arrived. It wasn't a surprise. Elias had told me it was coming. It was a formal request to appear before the Municipal Integrity Commission. It sounded impressive, but I knew what it was. A committee appointed by the mayor to make problems go away. They didn't want the truth. They wanted to manage the damage. I went to Elias's office to prepare. They are going to try to rattle you, Elias said, pacing the small room. They will ask about your mental health. They will ask about your relationship with your father. They will try to paint this as a family squabble that got out of hand. What do I do? I asked. You be boring, Elias said. You be a compliance officer. Do not talk about your feelings. Do not talk about your childhood. Talk about dates, amounts, and signatures. If they ask, why do you think your father did this? You say I cannot speculate on his motives. I can only testify to the documents. Be the paper. I said, exactly, Elias said. Be the paper. As we were finishing, my phone buzzed. It was a number I recognized. The senator's office. I put it on speaker. Violet? It was the aide, the young woman who had approached me at the restaurant. Her voice was bright, helpful. The senator heard about the subpoena. She wanted to reach out. We have a media consultant we work with. Very discreet. Very good. We would love to send him over to you, to help you prep. Prep for what? I asked. For the optics, the aide said. You know how these hearings can be. The press will be there. We want to make sure you know how to frame your story to ensure the right people are held accountable. I looked at Elias. He shook his head. Who are the right people? I asked. Well, the aide hesitated. The developer, obviously, Mr. Gentry, and the rogue elements in the planning department. We want to make sure the narrative remains focused on the corporate overreach, not personal tragedies. She meant my father, and she meant the senator's own failure to catch this sooner. She wanted me to tell a clean story, a story where the senator was the hero and the developer was the villain, and my father was just a footnote. I don't need media coaching. I said, Violet, we strongly suggest it. For your own protection. I hung up. They are scared, Elias said. They should be. I said, that afternoon, I met Elena, the whistleblower, for the second time. This time, we didn't meet in a park. We met in the conference room of a law firm Elias respected. Elena had brought her own lawyer, a nervous young man who kept checking his watch. Elena looked better. She had cut her hair. She looked less like a victim and more like someone who had decided to fight back. I found something else, Elena said, after we talked. I went back through my own backups. I remembered something about the testing company. The one that was waived? I asked. Before it was waived. She said, 3 years before the waiver. There was a preliminary test. It was done by a small subcontractor called Geotech. I wrote the name down. Geotech found the arsenic. Elena said, they wrote a report. It was bad. Red flag bad. They submitted it to the developer, CG Partners. And then? And then CG Partners disputed the findings. Elena said, they claimed the samples were contaminated. They refused to pay the invoice. They threatened to sue Geotech for incompetence. She slid a piece of paper across the polished table. This is a settlement agreement, she said. Between CG Partners and Geotech, I read the document. It was short. CG Partners agreed to pay Geotech $50,000 in exchange. Geotech agreed to withdraw their report and sign a non-disclosure agreement. They paid them to bury the test. I said, yes, Elena said, and look at the signature on the check that paid the settlement. I looked at the photocopy of the check attached to the agreement. It wasn't drawn on a CG Partners account. It was drawn on VMR Holdings. My breath caught. My father paid for the silence. He didn't just hide the money for the fake cleanup. He had financed the cover-up of the original poison. He was the bank for the whole operation. This changes everything, Elias said quietly. This isn't just fraud. This is conspiracy to endanger public health. I looked at the signature on the check. Violet Reed. It was the same forged scrawl. I felt a wave of nausea, but I pushed it down. Can we authenticate that this check came from the fraudulent account? Elias asked Elena's lawyer. Yes, the lawyer said. We have the routing numbers. Good, I said. I stood up. I kept the copy of the check. I needed air. I walked home from the law office, ignoring the darkening sky. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was Sarah. I didn't answer. She called again immediately. Then a text. Pick up. Dad is losing it. I sat on a bench near a bus stop and called her back. Vi? Oh my God. Vi, what did you do? I filed a dispute. Sarah, I told you I would. Dad is at the house, she said. Her voice was high, panic-stricken. He is tearing through his files. He is screaming at Mom. He says the bank froze everything, the operating accounts, the personal checking, even the joint account with Mom. That happens when you commit fraud. I said, he is telling everyone you stole from him. Sarah said, he called Aunt Linda. He called the cousins. He is telling them that you embezzled money from his consulting firm and that you are trying to frame him to cover your tracks. He says you are mentally unstable and that the senator's people brainwashed you. I closed my eyes. I had expected this, but hearing it still felt like a physical blow. The speed with which he had turned on me was breathtaking. He is lying. Sarah, I know, Sarah cried. I know he's lying, but Mom believes him, or she is pretending to. She is terrified. Vi, they have no money access. The cards are declining. I can't help them. Sarah, you have to stop this, she begged. Just withdraw the dispute. We can fix it internally. Dad says if you withdraw it, he can get the accounts unlocked and pay off the loan. He can't pay it off. Sarah, the money is gone. And even if he could, the arsenic is still in the ground. What arsenic? What are you talking about? It is too late. Sarah, I said, tell Mom to get her own lawyer. A real one. I hung up and blocked her number. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. I blocked my mother next. Then my father. I was an orphan now. An orphan by choice. I was almost to my apartment when my phone rang again. A local number I didn't recognize. I assumed it was another relative, another flying monkey sent by my father. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text came through. Ms. Reed, this is David Rossi from the City Chronicle. I have some documents regarding a home equity line in your name linked to the Riverfront project. I also have a source saying you are cooperating with the senator to take down Cyrus Gentry. I need a comment. I stared at the screen. A source saying you are cooperating with the senator. I hadn't told anyone about my cooperation except Elias, the senator, and the whistleblower. Elias wouldn't leak. The whistleblower was too scared. It was the senator's office. They were leaking my name. They were positioning me as the heroic victim who was working with the senator. They were trying to get ahead of the story. If the press knew I was working with the senator, it made it look like the senator was proactive, that she was driving the investigation. It also put a target on my back. I didn't reply. I forwarded the text to Elias. No comment. Elias texted back instantly. Do not engage. I walked into my apartment building, feeling like the walls were closing in. I checked my mailbox. There was a handwritten envelope, no stamp. It had been dropped off by hand. I opened it in the elevator. It was a note on a napkin. The Sterling Restaurant. Dear Ms. Reed, I hope this reaches you. I am the manager on duty from the night you dined with us. I wanted to tell you something that has sat wrong with me. After you left that night, the senator's aide, the young woman, came back to the host stand. She didn't just ask your name. She asked if we had your credit card on file. She asked if we knew your father. She asked if you came in often. It felt like she was vetting you. She left a very large tip for the server who gave her the info. I thought you should know. It didn't feel random. I crumpled the napkin in my hand. It wasn't a chance encounter. You look for the rot. That's what the senator had said. She hadn't spotted a competent woman in a crisis and decided to mentor her. She had spotted Robert Reed's daughter, the daughter of the man connected to her biggest donor's dirty laundry, and realized she had found a weapon. She knew who I was before I stood up to help the woman with the heart pills. The incident just gave her an excuse to approach me. I wasn't a person to her. I was leverage. I called Elias. I need a meeting with the senator. I said, tomorrow, Violet. The hearing is in 2 days. We should focus on tomorrow. Elias, with you present. If she doesn't agree, tell her I'm canceling my testimony. She agreed. We met in a neutral location this time, a conference room at the public library. The senator arrived with her aide and a lawyer of her own. She looked calm, polished, every inch the statesman. Violet, she said, offering a warm smile. We are all ready for Thursday. My team has prepared a... Did you know who I was? I interrupted. The room went quiet. I pulled the napkin out of my pocket and placed it on the table. The night at the restaurant. I said, Did you know I was Robert Reed's daughter before you sent your aide over? The senator looked at the napkin. She didn't flush. She didn't fidget. She just clasped her hands. Violet, this is a small city. She said, I know your father. I know of his complications. That is not an answer. I said, Did you target me? She sighed. A sound of disappointed patience. I keep tabs on the players in this town. Violet, I knew your father was involved with Gentry. I knew he was the weak link. When I saw you that night, I saw an opportunity. To use me? To use your perspective, she said smoothly. I needed someone on the inside. Someone with integrity. And yes, someone with the name. That is how politics works. We use the tools we have to get the result we need. The result you need, I said. The result the city needs, she snapped, her voice finally losing its polish. That soil is toxic. Violet, Gentry is corrupt. Your father is a criminal. I am trying to clean it up. Does it matter how we got here if we get the justice? It matters to me. I said. She leaned forward. Don't be naive. You want to take your father down? You can't do it alone. You need me. You need the platform I am giving you. Without me, you are just a daughter with a grievance. With me, you are a whistleblower. And what about Gentry? I asked. Why is he on your donor list? She didn't blink. Keep your enemies close, she said. I took his money so he would think he was safe. So he wouldn't shred the documents. It was strategy. It sounded like a lie. It sounded like the same strategic logic my father used when he forged my signature. I did it for the family. I did it for the greater good. Everyone had a reason for using me, and everyone thought I should be grateful for the privilege. I stood up. I am not your tool. Eleanor, I said, I am subpoenaing you. Violet, she said, her voice cold. You will testify. I looked at her. I will testify. I said, but I will testify to the whole truth, not just the parts that fit your narrative. I walked out. Elias followed me, looking pale. You just declared war on the most powerful woman in the state, he whispered. No, I said, I just declared independence. I spent the next 24 hours in a frenzy of organization. I wasn't going to let the senator control the hearing. I wasn't going to let her aide leak selected snippets to the press, to paint me as a hero or a victim depending on the hour. I called it the multi-drop. I scanned everything: the fraudulent HELOC documents, the VMR Holdings formation papers with the forged signature, the email from my father demanding the waiver, the settlement agreement between Gentry and the testing company, the check signed by Violet Reed, paying for the silence. I organized them into a timeline: clear, fact-based, undeniable. Then I made a list of recipients: the Municipal Integrity Commission, the official body, the State Attorney General's Office, Financial Crimes Division, the FBI Field Office, Public Corruption Squad, David Rossi, the journalist who had texted me, he seemed hungry, an investigative reporter from the rival newspaper, known for hating the senator, the bank's fraud department. I drafted a cover letter. To whom it may concern, my name is Violet Reed. Over the past 5 years, my identity was used without my consent to facilitate the concealment of environmental hazards and the laundering of illicit funds regarding the Riverfront Revitalization Project. I am not a political operative. I am not a disgruntled family member. I am a compliance officer. The attached documents demonstrate a pattern of fraud involving Robert Reed, Cyrus Gentry, and failures of oversight by municipal officials. I am releasing these documents simultaneously to all oversight bodies and the press to ensure transparency and to prevent the narrative from being manipulated by any involved party. The truth is in the numbers. I sat at my kitchen table. It was 3 a.m. on the day of the hearing. My finger hovered over the send button. I thought about my father. I thought about the dinner. I thought about the way he had looked at me when he called me worthless. He had built a life on the assumption that I would always be silent, that I would absorb the pain and say nothing. I wasn't silent anymore. I clicked send. I watched the progress bar. Sent. I closed the laptop. I went to my closet and picked out my suit for the hearing. Navy blue, sharp, professional. I wasn't going there to be saved. I was going there to work. The email confirmation from Elias arrived at 8 in the morning on Thursday. It was a single line of text: packages delivered. The clock is running. I sat at my small kitchen table, staring at the screen. I had not slept. I was wearing my navy suit, the jacket buttoned, my hair pulled back into a tight bun. I felt like a soldier waiting for the artillery to start. The multi-drop strategy was designed to create a saturation point. Usually, when a scandal breaks, the accused has time to spin it. They get a phone call from a friendly reporter. They issue a statement. They muddy the waters. But Elias and I had removed the buffer by sending the evidence to the bank, the municipal inspector, the state ethics committee, and 2 rival journalists simultaneously. We ensured that no one could kill the story without wondering if someone else was already printing it. The silence lasted for 3 hours. At 11, the first tremor hit. It was a notification on my phone from the City Chronicle. Breaking news: Riverfront developer linked to shadow banking scheme. Compliance officer alleges massive identity theft. I clicked the link. David Rossi had not wasted time. He didn't lead with the boring details of zoning waivers. He led with the human element. He told the story of a daughter whose credit had been hijacked by her father to hide illicit funds. He used the phrase systemic exploitation of family trust. 20 minutes later, the second article dropped from the rival paper. Toxic legacy. Secret settlement reveals arsenic at riverfront site. Waived tests raise questions of corruption. This was the heavy hit. This was the one that made it impossible for the mayor to ignore. The article included a photograph of the check signed by Violet Reed and a forensic analysis pointing out the discrepancies in the signature. The narrative had shifted before my father even woke up to check the news. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the accomplice. I was the alleged victim. Then, my phone rang. It was him. I stared at the name on the screen. Dad. I picked it up. I didn't say hello. I just listened. Violet. His voice was a raw, wet sound. It cracked on my name. Violet. What have you done? I turned on the recorder app on my other phone. I told the truth. Dad. I said, "You destroyed us." He screamed. The sound distorted the speaker. The police are at the office. They are seizing the computers. Do you understand? They are taking everything. You took everything first. I said calmly, You took my name. You took my credit. You took my safety. I did it for you, he sobbed. He switched instantly from rage to pity. It was a performance I had seen 1,000 times. But now I saw the wires. I was trying to build an empire for you girls. I was trying to leave a legacy. Violet, please, call them. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Tell them I had verbal permission. I am an old man. I can't go to prison. I listened to him beg. I listened to him try to leverage the same guilt he had planted in me when I was 6 years old. After all I sacrificed, after all I gave you, but the guilt wasn't there anymore. It had been replaced by the cold, hard weight of the facts I had memorized. I am not calling anyone, Dad. I said, "You are ungrateful," he roared, the pity vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. You are a spiteful, jealous little girl. You are nothing without me. Who do you think you are? You are a paper pusher. You are nobody. I waited for him to finish. I waited until the only sound on the line was his ragged breathing. I am done being your shield. I said. I hung up. I blocked the number. The hearing was scheduled for 2 p.m. I arrived at the municipal building 30 minutes early. The sidewalk was crowded. There were cameras. There were people with microphones. Elias met me at the side entrance. He looked nervous, sweating through his shirt, but he gave me a nod. Just the facts. Violet, he whispered, be the paper. We walked into the hearing room. It was packed. The committee members looked grim. In the front row, I saw the senator. She was wearing a white suit, looking like a statue of justice. She nodded at me, a tight, controlled movement. She thought this was her victory. I sat at the witness table. The microphone smelled of metal and old breath. Ms. Reed, the chairman said, you have submitted a substantial number of documents to this committee. We would like you to summarize your involvement with VMR Holdings. I leaned into the microphone. I didn't look at the cameras. I looked at my hands, resting on the folder of evidence. I have never been involved with VMR Holdings. I said, my voice was steady. It didn't shake. I did not form the company. I did not open the bank accounts. I did not sign the checks. But your name is on the documents, the chairman said. My name was used as a vehicle to conceal the source of funds. I said, I have provided the committee with handwriting analysis confirming the forgery. I have also provided the timeline of the transfers. I opened the folder. On October 4th, 3 years ago, a wire transfer of $200,000 was made from VMR Holdings to Vantage Hauling. I read, Vantage Hauling performed no work. On October 5th, the environmental waiver for Sector 4 was granted by the Planning Commission. On October 6th, a deposit of $10,000 was made to the re-election fund of the Planning Commissioner. The room went silent. The sound of pens scratching on paper was deafening. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just read the dates. On November 12th, a settlement of $50,000 was paid to Geotech Testing Services, drawn on VMR Holdings. This payment coincides with the suppression of a report detailing arsenic levels 400% above the safety limit. I looked up. I looked directly at the senator. And on January 15th of this year, I continued. A donation of $10,000 was made to the citizens for a Better Tomorrow PAC, an organization associated with Senator Caldwell. The donor was CG Development Partners. The principal of CG Development Partners is Cyrus Gentry, the same individual who benefited from the waivers my name was used to procure. The senator's face didn't move, but her eyes went cold. The reporters in the back row turned their heads toward her like a school of fish. I am not here to assign political blame. I said, I am here to correct the record. My name is Violet Reed. I am a compliance officer, and I refuse to be liable for the corruption of others. I closed the folder. The silence lasted for 5 seconds. Then the room exploded. The senator held a press conference on the steps of the building immediately after the hearing. I watched from the window of Elias's car as we drove away. She stood behind a podium, flanked by flags. She was good. She was very good. We must applaud the bravery of Ms. Reed, the senator said into the bank of microphones. Transparency is the disinfectant of democracy. I am shocked. shocked to learn of the depth of this deception. "Senator," a reporter shouted. It was the investigative journalist from the rival paper. "What about the donation from Gentry? You accepted money from the man poisoning the riverfront while you were investigating him. Did you know?" The senator's smile tightened. It became a rictus. "My campaign finances are a matter of public record," she said stiffly. "We receive thousands of donations. If any funds are found to be connected to illicit activities, they will be returned immediately. This investigation is about the system, not about individuals." She turned and walked away, ignoring the shouted questions. I watched her go. She wasn't destroyed. People like her are rarely destroyed. She would return the money. She would claim ignorance. She would survive. But the veneer was cracked. Everyone saw it. She wasn't the crusader she pretended to be. She was just another player on the board, and she had been caught trading pieces. "Violet," Elias said from the driver's seat. "You did it." I looked at my hands. They were still shaking. Just a little. "It is not over," I said. I was right. It wasn't over. 2 days later, Cyrus Gentry and CG Development Partners issued a statement. They announced a strategic pause on the riverfront revitalization project. They blamed the toxic political climate and unfounded hysteria. In the same breath, they filed a lawsuit. It was a massive, sprawling complaint naming the city, the planning commission, the testing company, and unnamed conspirators for defamation and tortious interference with a contract. They weren't admitting guilt. They were buying time. They were using their millions to clog the courts, betting that the public would lose interest before the case went to trial. The project stopped. The bulldozers sat silent on the fenced-off lot. The arsenic stayed in the ground. It wasn't a perfect victory. The bad guys weren't in handcuffs yet. My father was out on bail, claiming his lawyer would exonerate him. Gentry was suing everyone in sight, but the building stopped. No families were moving onto poisoned land. That was the only win that mattered. The weeks that followed were strange. I was unemployed, but my phone wouldn't stop ringing. My name had become a brand. The compliance officer, the woman who read the fine print. I got calls from headhunters, big firms, banks in New York, defense contractors. "We need someone with your optical integrity." One recruiter told me over a lunch I didn't eat. "We have some legacy issues we need to clean up. We need a face that says trust." They offered me salaries that made my head spin. 200,000, 300,000. But as I listened to them, I heard the code words: risk management, narrative control, strategic silence. They didn't want me to find fraud. They wanted me to be the mascot of honesty while they continued business as usual. They wanted to buy my reputation to cover their own sins. They were offering me hush money disguised as a paycheck. I realized then that integrity has a market value, and the moment you sell it, it is gone. I turned them all down. Sarah texted me 3 weeks after the hearing. "Can we meet?" "Please, neutral ground." I met her in the parking lot of a grocery store halfway between our apartments. We sat in her car. She looked tired. Her perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. She wasn't wearing makeup. "How are they?" I asked. "Bad." Sarah said, He is a shell. He just sits in his study and drinks. Mom is trying to keep up appearances, but the club memberships are frozen. People are crossing the street to avoid her." She gripped the steering wheel. "I am sorry." "Vi," she whispered. "For what?" "For knowing." She said, "I knew something was wrong. I knew he was using you. I didn't know about the poison. I swear. But I knew about the money. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I was scared," she said. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. I was scared of him. I was scared of losing the lifestyle. I was scared of being you. I saw how he treated you. I didn't want to be the worthless one. I looked at my sister, the golden child, the success story. She was just as trapped as I had been. She was a prisoner of his approval. "I forgive you for being scared." "Sarah," I said. She reached for my hand. "Oh, Vi, thank you. We can fix this. We can rebuild. You can come to Sunday dinner. Mom misses you." I pulled my hand away. "No, Sarah," I said. She froze. "What?" "I forgive you." I said, But I am not coming back. I can't sit at that table anymore. I can't pretend that love is transactional. But we are family, she pleaded. I know, I said, and I hope you find a way to be free of him too. But I can't carry you anymore. I spent my whole life carrying the weight of this family's dysfunction so you could be perfect and Dad could be powerful. I put the weight down. I am not picking it up again. I opened the car door. Goodbye. Sarah. I walked away across the asphalt. I didn't look back. I knew she was crying. I knew it hurt. But it was a clean hurt. It was the pain of a bone breaking so it could set straight. I moved the next month. I sold the furniture I had bought to impress my mother. I threw away the clothes I wore to fit into the corporate mold. I rented a small apartment on the 3rd floor of a walk-up in a neighborhood that wasn't trendy, but had big trees and wide sidewalks. The apartment was small. It had 1 bedroom and a kitchen that barely fit a table. But it had a window that faced east, and in the morning, the sun filled the room with a light so bright it made me squint. I got a job. It wasn't at a bank. It wasn't at a healthcare giant. I worked for a nonprofit watchdog group called Civic Transparency. My office was a cubicle with a wobbly chair. The pay was half of what I used to make. I drove a 10-year-old Honda, but the work was real. I spent my days reading municipal contracts. I looked for the loopholes. I looked for the shell companies. I looked for the rot. On a Tuesday afternoon, 6 months after the hearing, I was scrolling through a spreadsheet regarding a new highway project. I saw a vendor name that looked familiar. I checked the address. It was a PEO box in a strip mall. I smiled. I opened a new file. I typed the date. I typed the time. My father had called me worthless. He had said I never amounted to anything. He was wrong. I was the person who checked the bag. I was the person who counted the steps. I was the person who stopped the machine. And that was worth everything. Thank you for listening to Violet's story. It is a story about the quiet power of competence and the heavy price of truth. I hope it resonated with you. Please let me know in the comments where you are listening from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And if you enjoyed this, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice served cold. Share your thoughts in English below. Would you have forgiven the sister? Or was Violet right to walk away? Until next time.